thank you all for coming. I'm sorry about the little glitch, but it always happens. It never fails, I swear to God. So I'm going to talk to you all today about sort of the story of my life for the last 7 years. And then if you guys want to interrupt me, that's fine. I'm cool with answering questions, or you can save them to the end. But so what I'm going to talk about is, I'm going to begin by telling you about the creation of the Harvard Library Innovation Lab at the Harvard Law School, which in the first place is kind of weird, because why is the Library Innovation Lab sitting in the law school? Well, it's kind of because the law school was able to move more quickly and more flexibly to do things than the big main library, and I think that's pretty typical of academia. So we didn't just crop up. We were essentially, we got started in not necessarily an auspicious sort of way. At the time that we began, Dean Elena Kagan, who you probably know, who is now a Supreme Court Justice, she was our dean. And she came into the law school and looked around and wanted to change a lot of things, one of which was a library. Our library was a very big, old, traditional library, largest academic law library in the world. We collected, we still try to collect the laws of every country from the world in the vernacular and in English. So we were very collection focused, not so much user focused. And that came through from not so much our students, but our faculty. And Elena picked up on that, and she said, I want you guys to modernize and become a library that serves the needs of what users today need. So she hired, and this was a scandalous thing at the time, a non-librarian named John Palfrey to run the law library. Do any of you know John? He's an amazing man. He's a visionary. He's not a librarian. He's a lawyer by training. He ran he was the executive director of the Berkman Center for Internet and Society at Harvard. He's now the head of school at Phillips Andover Academy. He's moved out of libraries, but he's been instrumental in moving libraries along into the digital age. He was one of the founders of the Digital Public Library of America. So, so John came in, and he was tasked with us, modernizing the law library. And the first thing that was done, I should back up for a minute. Elena had appointed an outside committee to look at our library. And it was made up of a law librarian and a tech person. And it was a good committee. And they made a list of things that we should be doing. And so we had that to start with. Then John came in. And John appointed a committee made up of a smattering of folks in the library. It wasn't top down. It was very much union people, non-union people, managers, non-managers. And we had a consultant that we worked with named Maureen Sullivan, who's from down here. A lot of you know her. It's lovely. I love Maureen. And so John gave us sort of a view of what he wanted us to do. I reproduced it here. You can't possibly read it. But so we had a committee. We had a consultant. We had a vision. And what we were asked to do is redesign the library bottom up, sort of in line with the vision. So the first thing we did is we ranked everything we did in the library according to whether it was A, B, or C. So A meant this is an essential function, and this is currently what we were doing, right? This is before we reorged. So what are we doing that's essential and we must keep doing at all costs? B was what's good, what do we kind of want to do, but maybe we want to tweak it a bit? And C is we don't need to do this anymore. So does anybody know why my picture is this picture? Guesses? This was the only thing in the first round, this was the only thing that we marked as a C. We weren't going to put the paper in the in the polls anymore. So that, like we had to go around a few times. And people still kind of bitch about this. But we missed the polls, But you really, it really was a great strategy, and it was a great way for us to really think about what are we doing? What do we need to do? And it gave you sort of the big macro level view. And we had to go through it a few times. It was sometimes contentious, but it really worked. And Maureen was great in keeping us on track. I don't advise doing this sort of thing without a consultant, because I think you get too enmeshed in your own stuff that you have in your workplace, and it's good to have someone from outside. But everybody was on board and wanting to move forward, so that was great. So this was the result of our reorg. It's kind of a silly graphic, but the idea is that everything came in through the front door, that it was sort of we said concierge level service. It didn't matter where you were from, we would get you what you needed, very user focused. And you can see at the top is a little quadrant called Digital Access and Development. So that is what was the very, very seed of the Library Innovation Lab. That was a new part of the library that we were going to focus on doing digitization, which we're already doing to a bit. We have a wonderful special collections group, and we were already digitizing some of those things. But what John wanted us to do was create an in-house digital lab that could initiate its own innovative digital projects. So, how many of you know about the Google 80/20 process? Google 80/20 was it's not just Google, a lot of big corporations did it. It's a practice where 20% of a person's time is given to experimentation or creation. And this is how the Post-it note came about at 3M, apparently. If you're given like 1 day a week to just experiment on things, cool things might come out of it. And that's how the Post-it note was born. It was an accident. So we tried to implement the Google 80/20 in our new reorg. It wasn't exactly like Google, because you can't just let people experiment on anything. We had to say, okay, here are some things we're working on in the library. Would you, cataloger, like to work in the digital lab on this for 20% of your time? And that helped. It helped mix up people, get people sort of all engaged in what's the overall mission going forward. And we still do it. It's voluntary. It's not, if you want to do it and your manager says it's okay, it's fine. We can always find something for people. And some people do it other ways. You could go work in cataloging. We have a foreign and international librarian now doing 20% in cataloging. So it's something that's been good, and we've kept it. Okay, so this was John's mission. He wanted to hack libraries in a good way. He would always say, I want to hack libraries in a good way. And that's what the digital lab's focus was when we first started out. John always believed that libraries were in the best position to create the kind of tools that we know our users need. And he was worried about us ceding that responsibility to Google and Amazon and letting those people dictate to us what our users might like. So he used to say, get in front of the mob and call it a parade. And he really wanted us in the middle of it. So we'd reorganized and we'd come up with these new positions. We did have a retirement option, and many people retired, so that helped. No one was laid off. People were rearranged. They were given, once we had the new org set up, people were given it wasn't a ballot, but it was like a form, which part do I want to work in? And generally everybody got their requests. Most people wanted to kind of stay in their same area, but we moved people around and it worked out pretty well. The unfortunate thing was, this was 2009, which was the downturn, the economic downturn. And believe it or not, Harvard is subject to downturns just like everybody else. And Harvard is, I don't want to sound bad, but it kind of keeps its money close. And so that's how come it has so much money. And so we were asked to do a 5% reduction in the library budget. So our idea about moving forward and making this cool lab kind of got stalled for a bit. So, but we kept going. There was a chill on hiring. So at that time, we had one developer, we had one librarian, we had me. I have no technology background. And we had John Palfrey, and that was the lab. And so he came up with this idea that he called a Summer Skunk Works project, and that's the skunk. A Skunk Works project is something that came out of Lockheed Martin, and it's like an under-the-radar kind of project that you do and nobody really knows about. And so that's what our big initial first project started out as, a skunk work project that was done by one person, the developer, oversight by me. And so what it morphed into was what this thing represents. So the Summer Skunk Works project was an idea to make the Internet Movie Database. You guys are familiar with the Internet Movie Database. John wanted to make an Internet Movie Database of faculty at Harvard, and he was starting at law, but what did the Harvard Library or Harvard faculty not just produce and write, but what do they read? What are they researching? Bigger than what they produce, more about what do they take in. So we started looking at that concept, and it kind of grew into a bigger concept about what is the Harvard community reading? Not just the faculty. Yeah, it's cool to figure out what's the faculty reading, but what about the graduate students in the engineering school? What about the FAS undergrads? And so our big project that's beginning to be represented here, which was supposed to be the Internet Movie Database for faculty, turned into something more like a database of interest at Harvard, and we started calling it Shelf Life at the time. It also morphed into a virtual browser for the Harvard collection. And the way that started is we started working on this Internet Movie Database thing, right? And we worked on that, and we got back-end data going back and forth from the library catalog and from things like that. And then we started to be unchilled with our positions, and so we were able to hire some people. And we hired a design person who worked in other libraries down in New York, and he was into visualizing library collections, like in a virtual browser sort of way. So we worked with him. We began to hire some outside consultants who worked with us, many from the startup world. They taught us about agile development, which is a practice that we use in the lab, meaning you quickly release and re-release. And so we learned how to be a little bit like a startup at that point. And we also were lucky to have some cooperation from our head of IT at the law school, who had been in that world too. So we were very lucky to have a good core of people working with us. So this was an early iteration of Shelf Life, and it was a portion that we called Stack View. But essentially, this is the virtual browser representation of the library collection. And Harvard has, at least, no one knows exactly, 73 libraries, and half of our collection is off-site, 42 miles away in a depository. So it is literally impossible to browse the collection entirely. What we did with this project was we made it possible to virtually browse the collection in its entire. If you wanted to, you could start with A of the class numbers and go all the way through Z. So this is an initial design of what it would look like, and we wanted to represent the books as they actually were. So we tried to make them look like that. I'm going to show you a little thing about that in a minute. And the other idea was merging the two things that I was talking about, what's popular and the browser. So merging the two together by a heat map process. So showing the more popular the work, the more brighter the color. And so I'm going to show you that in a better way, but this is just an initial version of it. Okay, so as we were doing this, we started playing around more with the checkouts and the usage. And this is a little spin-off that we had for a while called Check Out the Checkouts. And this is, what is, you could see the school breakdown here, what's the business school, and you could click on the tabs and see what was being checked out. I love that headphones shows up twice, which is so typical. But anyway, we did that, and then we got a little bit bolder, and we started tweeting checkouts well, it wasn't as they occurred, because there was a privacy issue, and I see people nodding their heads. If we would have tweeted the checkouts as they occurred, the possibility would have been that someone could have been sitting and watching someone check it out and matched it together. So we delayed them 24 hours and hoping to anonymize them that way. This is one of the key things that when you're trying to be innovative happens. This was a failure. We thought it was super cool, but some of the professors did not. And so we were asked to take, actually the main library was asked to take down their portion of the checkouts of the library hose. We still have it at the law library, but it's not used that often. I do know that Seattle Public Library has something like this. I think they have a board behind, I've heard they have a board behind their circulation area where it shows what's being checked out. We never linked anything to the person. It was just the matter of this book is out, going out. But anyway.
So this is just by title?
Just by title, yep. So we shut down the library hose, but it was fun and no one was harmed. So we're back to shelf life here, and I'm going to just play you a little video clip of what we were thinking. We made this for the community to tell them what we're doing. So you can see we're beginning to grow it in a more structured way. And this is what it looks like today. This is Shelf Life. And it's actually an alternative browser in the Harvard Library. If you go to our library portal, you will see Hollis, our catalog, but this is also an alternative browser. Honestly, I don't think it's used that much, but it is available and it is used. It's links to our catalog, so you can click on a book and this will be, the one that you click on will be reflected here. If it's available digitally, we would link to that. If it's not, you can link to the catalog. Here's its stack score. This is that usage stuff that's coming in. Yeah?
You said, if I understood correctly, that the checkouts, the original one was a failure because faculty objected to it. What was the objection?
So the objection was, and this is a stupid objection, it doesn't have anything to do with privacy. This isn't what a library should be doing. And this was a more traditional faculty member in the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. But there were some mumblings about privacy. And so just to be on the safe side, we backed off a little bit. But this, you can see that we kind of did, we always feel embarrassed about this. We gave numbers based on who was checking it out. So faculty got a higher number than a graduate student or an undergrad. And we always felt like that was kind of crappy. But you can move things around however you want with Stack Life. This is open source. One of the things we do is we make everything open source from the Library Innovation Lab. We put it on GitHub. I'll show you that later. So you could take this if you wanted to implement it in your library and style it any way you wanted. The cool thing, though, this is the infinite stack. The stack would allow you to conceivably browse the 14 million items at Harvard that were in the system. Yeah?
So you said you can go from Stacklight into the catalog.
Yep.
If you find something in the catalog, can you then jump to Stacklight
No, that would be
and browse
cool.
around it?
That would be super cool.
Like I found this cool book
Yeah.
and I jumped to Stacklight and
Yeah,
started
that would be really cool.
but then
We should do it now. No, it's up there now. Someone could do
I
it.
think that's where you would go.
Yeah, that would be the best thing.
I
Yeah.
discovered a good
Yeah, I
item.
discovered a good
Let's
item.
jump.
Go back. I mean, you start here, and but if you don't start here, that's really a good point. We sort of put Stack Life up there and left it because we're on to new things now. And that's one of the things, one of the ideas about the Innovation Lab is we would create things, but we don't necessarily want to maintain them. We want to put them out there and let others maintain them. This is now maintained by our library, library IT infrastructure, not by the Innovation Lab. Okay, so that was the end result of the Skunkworks project from 2009. In the meantime, we kept building our staff. We focused on the big project, Stack Life. But at the same time, there was sort of an innovation resurgence in the Harvard Library as a whole. And it was out of the Office of Scholarly Communication. The Office of Scholarly Communication created something called the Library Lab, not the Innovation Lab, the Library Lab. And what it did was it offered lightweight grants to anyone in the Harvard libraries, librarians, library staff, students, faculty. If you had an idea that you thought could make the library better, you could submit your idea to the Library Lab, and they would give you these lightweight grants to build things. Or it didn't even have to be that fancy. It could be something not even digital, but most things were digital projects. So the idea was to create lightweight innovations that would benefit the library and establish a parking lot, again, where people could build on ideas. And it was funded by some grant money from the Arcadia Foundation, which has been a very good benefactor of Harvard libraries. So we started taking advantage of this Harvard Library Lab because we're in the Innovation Lab, we're sitting in the law library, our salaries are funded, right? They're funding our salaries, but there's nothing else. So if we want extra money, we need to go out and get it. And so this was one way that we got some extra money for our projects. And so I'm going to show you another little clip that is one of our projects.
I'm Matt Phillips.
We made this awesome box.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I check out this book from the library and I think it was fantastic or useful or entertaining for whatever reason, and I want everybody to know about it, I just come to return it to the library and put it in the awesome box.
And then the person working the circulation desk checking in these works finds that it's in the awesome box instead of the regular returns box. So they scan it a second time, it gets tagged in the awesome system, and then of course it gets checked into. Now that it's in the awesome system, you should be able to view it in a web browser along with other things that have been recently awesomed. Or if this has been returned a whole bunch of times, maybe it's making its way in the most awesome list, so you should be able to find it there too.
The idea is to get the community interacting and to gather digital data in an analog way.
I like its simplicity and its lightheartedness. It's whimsy. You don't very often get to kind of physically vote. How often do you get to do that? There's no trick or anything. You don't have to sign up for an account or any silliness. Just physically place your vote in one box or the other.
We put out a box at Widener and a box at Lamont. I thought before we implemented it that there would be just like tons of DVDs and the bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers and things like that. But it's actually been a little bit more academic and yet like fun or very interesting sounding academic titles.
Pole dancing.
Yeah, there was.
Or some bizarre title like that. Instructions on how to pole dance academically or something on it. Do you remember that?
Gender and pole dancing
Oh.
or something like that.
The most eye-catching titles.
So we have plans for more libraries at Harvard, obviously, and doing a bigger launch to the whole community. We mostly focus on staff. And ideally, I think public libraries are a great place for the Awesome Box and getting them around the country.
So, I think that the library, its contents may kind of change over time, but it's really kind of a community gathering place, hopefully. It's kind of the center of campus community. And so I think that's what the Awesome Box does. It brings the community together. So people are voting on works that they like, and other members of their community can see those votes. So you can see what your community is engaging with.
So the Awesome Box, this is a shot of the website. Annie was right. It's wildly popular with public libraries. We have over 70,000 items that have been awesomed with the Awesome Box software. Is super easy to use. We just, public libraries ask us, can we get it? We send it to them. Total dud at Harvard. We took them away. No one likes it, which is fine. It was a little lightweight thing that we did with money from the lab, and it's being used, and we're happy. And I think the thing why it's so popular in the public libraries is little kids can do it, and they're not allowed to do anything else. They don't, they can't sign in or anything, but they can put something awesome in the Awesome Box. So we still have it running, it exists, but it's just Lamont and the two main libraries at Harvard, we don't want it. So that's fine. So as we grew, we thought it was really important to collaborate with other people and other libraries and other people out there doing library stuff. We held meetings in Boston, and we participated in larger meetings, working on linked open data and open cataloging data. We're always applying for grants, constantly trying to find money, because though Harvard's rich, it doesn't necessarily pour money into the libraries. We made some slow progress on that, and one of our successes in collaboration was with the Digital Public Library of America. When they first launched the DPLA service or website, they had a summer project called a beta sprint, and people were asked to submit ideas to the DPLA about how the website should look. And so we took our Shelf Life app and we made it work for the DPLA's book collection. So they don't have a huge book collection, but they do have a collection of open text, that are in the public domain. And so they've adopted the Shelf Life front end for that, and that's still used at the DPLA. So that was a fun thing for us to do. We continuously talk about what we're doing. During the innovation heyday at the Harvard Library, a number of us from the innovation lab were on what the university library was calling the innovation core team. They were trying to get innovation sort of embedded in the larger Harvard Library. And so this is just a picture of one of our unconferences that drew over 100 people from the libraries just to talk about what should we be doing. And it was really good. I think we have been successful in getting that culture of being innovative embedded in a lot of the librarians at Harvard, and people aren't so fearful of taking a chance, and I think that was really good. So this is now. This is kind of today's Library Innovation Lab, which is a little bit different than we were when we started. We now have 5 developers. We have 1 project manager, and we're currently looking for a sysop because we've grown large enough now that we have our own needs to keep things going. And this is one of the challenges of working in an institution that is like the Harvard Law School. Our Harvard Law School IT says, you're not acting like a library. You're doing things that we don't think we have to support. And that's bad, and we argue with them. And fortunately, our dean, Martha Minow, is a huge supporter of the Library Innovation Lab, and that is key. But we have come to the conclusion that it's probably worth our while to hire our own sysop. And so we're looking for that now. John Palfrey left and went on to become the head of school at Phillips Andover, and we have a new leader. Again, a visionary internet kind of person. His name is Jonathan Zittrain, and he's on the faculty of the Harvard Law School, the Harvard Computer Science School, of the Kennedy School. He's the head of the Berkman Center. He's the head of our library. He's like whiz kid extraordinaire. And so when he came in, he loved the lab, wanted to keep us going, but started focusing a little bit more on the legal stuff, which is totally legitimate. We've been doing a lot of open library stuff, but not so much in the law area. So the first thing we did, and this is a project that some of you might know about, is perma.cc. Has anyone heard of this project? It's a web archiving project. So Jonathan had been doing some research on the problem of link rot. Link rot is, I think most people know about link rot. That's when you go to a website and it's not there anymore. And it's a pervasive problem. And so Jonathan had done some research that showed that 50% of the sites that were cited in the main Harvard Law Reviews over the last 10 years were gone. Or no, 70%, I'm sorry. 50% of the citations from the US Supreme Court were dead. So he published this paper, and then he said to us, let's try to fix this. And so what we did is we developed this perma.cc website, which allows authors, editors, or writers to ensure that their citations to the web sources endure. So what they do is they take their URL that they want to cite, and they come to the Perma service website, they plug in the URL, we will cache the contents of that website and give them a new Perma URL that they can then put in their work along with the original URL. So if the original URL happens to die, that you could go to the Perma one and it would be there. And I just wanted to show you this. This is part of, has anyone seen this before? This is pretty famous. This is from a website that was cited in a Supreme Court opinion by Justice Alito. And it was about gun violence or something, but it rotted. And so someone came along and bought the website and posted this. I don't know if you can read it. Aren't you glad you didn't cite to this webpage in the Supreme Court Reporter at Brown versus Entertainment Merchants Association? If you had, like Justice Alito did, the original content would long since have disappeared, and someone else might have come along and purchased the domain in order to make a comment about the transience of linked information in the internet age. So we just love that. We just love this website. And we actually were at a conference where we showed it to the Supreme Court reporter, and what could she say? It's they're trying to figure out ways to preserve stuff. So we started Perma.cc in the legal, to solve a problem in the legal world. We work with courts, we work with law libraries. We are in the process, we have applied for an an IMLS grant to open Perma up, to expand it to all academic areas, and to allow for a pay for service option for people in the commercial world, because a lot of publishers would like to be able to use it. We have requests from law firms and other firms. But one of the things we did when we built Perma is we wanted to put libraries in the middle of the process, because libraries have always been in the preservation business. They've always kept things. If someone cited something in their work, it would be found in the library. We know how to keep things. We're trusted. And so what we did with Perma is we wanted to ensure that the scholarly stuff that was being cited was the stuff that was preserved. We had huge arguments at the beginning about, we don't want to just be a place to preserve porn and vacation photos. There was one of our people that was really arguing against that. We didn't want to do that. So what we did is, in order to use Perma, you have to be affiliated with a library. So the library is the registrar, the Perma registrar, and it can give Perma permission to use Perma to any of its faculty, its affiliates, if you have journals affiliated with your library, like a number of law libraries do, but I think I think main libraries do too. Anyone that you want to say is affiliated with your institution, you can say, yes, you are a Perma user affiliated with American University. You can use Perma, and you can preserve as many Perma sites as you want. If you're just Joe Blow on the street, you can't use Perma. Although we've changed it now, so you can use 10 links a month for free. But as I said, we're growing and trying to move into this commercial venture section. But we never want to make Perma a pay proposition for libraries and for the courts. So that's why we want to have this commercial side. Yeah.
Just to make sure I understood this.
Yep.
Is it just to create persistent links, or do you also cache?
We cache the content.
Cache the content.
Yes, we cache the content. And the users are putting up what they want to cite. There's the possibility that there's a copyright infringement in that situation. So we will take down the offending content if we are subject to a DMCA violation notification. But this is where the libraries come in as well. We won't delete it entirely. We'll make it a dark archive. And so if a person wanted to see that content, he or she could go to the PERMA library that they're affiliated with and see the content under Section 108 of the copyright law, which allows libraries to display that sort of thing. And the idea was that maybe we would get PERMA across the world, and in one copyright jurisdiction, maybe you couldn't see it, but in another one you could. So, and we do have partners in Australia, UK, and Germany. So,
So
yes.
where and who is supporting the maintenance, the storage space, all those costs?
Right now it's us. Right now it's us at the Harvard Law School. But another PERMA, another version, or not version, but another portion of the way PERMA works is we have partner libraries who will mirror the content. And we are going to have a private locks network as well that will support the content. Believe it or not, it's not that much space right now. But if we really branch out, that's why we look for the grant from the IMLS. We need to make PERMA a standalone entity, like a 501c3 with its own, governance. And there's enough interest in the private sector to pay for it. There really is. We just need to get it going, and that's why we need help from outside. Okay. I think I'm already over time, am I? I'm almost done. So we have some other projects that we work on, and I just want to highlight them for you. H2O is a virtual casebook platform where professors can create their own casebooks, mix and match from other cases this is mainly started in law, where we teach by the case method, so we're using cases from the courts. But you can mix and match your own content and create a virtual casebook that then the students can have on their browsers, and they don't have to buy the $150 casebooks and lug them around, and it's free. So that's a very popular thing, and it's being used at Harvard and elsewhere. We have the one in the corner here is called Haystacks. That is another kind of looking at the Harvard Library collection and its usage, and this was designed for collection development librarians, and it has the Harvard Library collection and its usage based on Library of Congress call number, and it's a data visualization service, so there's bubbles for what's being used, and you can go back and forth throughout time. It's just a little app that we have up. This is one of our newest projects. It's called Time Capsule Encryption, and it's kind of cool. This one's funded by the Knight Foundation. And this is this came, again, from Jonathan Zittrain's research, and it's a result of the issues with the folks that were involved in the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and their oral histories were being recorded, and they were talking about what actually happened. And those oral histories then went to Boston College Library in their archives and were supposed to not be released until the death of the people talking. But the British government came in and subpoenaed Boston College, and they gave up the archives. And it's been a pretty bad scene. So what time capsule encryption would do would be, in situations like this sort of thing with the oral history, you would divide it up and encrypt it, give keys to different libraries around the world or around the country or whatever. And the only way you could unlock that content would be if everybody put their keys together. So it's not foolproof, but it is a way that we might avoid that kind of situation in the future. Okay, I told you about the contents all on GitHub. So if anyone's a developer here and was interested in our stuff, please feel free to go to our GitHub site and take as much or as little as you want. So just in conclusion, it's really hard to be nimble in a 300-year-old institution. For example, we can't even accept credit cards. And we've got this software service called PERMA where we're trying to make it available to the world, and we can't take credit cards. So that's one of the things that you deal with when you're embedded in a big university. We'll fix that. There's risk aversion all over the place. We have a big project we've been working on that took 2 years for us to negotiate with our general counsel's office to just make sure it was okay with them. And so there's that. That doesn't happen in a startup world. People move much more quickly. Harvard is obsessed with its name. It doesn't want its name used in a lot of places, so when you're partnering with other people, you have to negotiate through all that. Academic salaries stink compared to the salaries in the real world of developers. We're trying to hire developers who are making $30,000 more a year than we can even offer. So it's really hard to get those folks in. They have to really want to be doing work in libraries, and a lot of them do, which is great. We have some fabulous people, but they're giving up something by working for us. And finally, we're not acting like a library. So we're at the whim of, obviously, our leaders. But I think that the biggest lesson is you just have to follow, what you want to do. You've got to have a strong leader that talks the talk and walks the walk. Paul Free was awesome. He started us out. He never wavered. We made mistakes. He let us go. Zittrain's the same way. And you have to have time to fail. We've failed plenty, but we keep going. And you don't necessarily need a lot of money. You need to know how to try to go out and get money, and you know how to work with people. But you can do little things like the Awesome Box or little things like that. It's just, and there's so many people coming up from the library school that are like amazing coders and just very creative. So create your own innovation lab. Go for it. And that's all I have.